So, be reading from the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, as translated with commentaries by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And this is the introduction. It's a little footnote here. This introduction was originally delivered as 5 morning lectures on the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta, the authoritative biography of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, before the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, New York City, April 10th through 14th in 1967. So this is the introduction. The word Chaitanya means living force. As living entities, we can move, but a table cannot, because it does not possess living force. Movement and activity may be considered signs or symptoms of the living force. Indeed, it may be said that there can be no activity without living force. Although the living force is present in the material condition, it is not amṛta, or immortal. The words Chaitanya-caritāmṛta, then, may be translated as the character of the living force in immortality. But how is this living force displayed immortally? It is not displayed by man or any other creature in this material universe, for none of us are immortal in this body. We possess the living force, we perform activities, and we are immortal by our nature and constitution. But the material condition into which we have been put does not allow our immortality to be displayed. It's stated in the Katha that eternality and the living force belong both to ourselves and God. Although this is true in that both God and ourselves are immortal, there's a difference. As living entities, we perform many activities, but we have a tendency to fall down into material nature. God has no such tendency. Being all-powerful, He never comes under the control of the material nature. Indeed, material nature is but one display of His inconceivable energies. From the ground we may see only clouds in the sky. But if we fly above the clouds, we can see the sun shining. From the skyscrapers and cities, from the sky, skyscrapers and cities seem very tiny. Similarly, from God's position, this entire material creation is insignificant. The tendency of the conditioned living entities to come down from the heights where everything can be seen in perspective. God, however, does not have this tendency. The Supreme Lord is not subject to fall down into illusion or maya, any more than the sun is subject to fall beneath the clouds. Because the Supreme Lord is not subject to illusion, He is unconditioned. Because we, as finite living entities, are prone to fall into illusion, we're called conditioned. Impersonalist philosophers, or Mayavadis, maintain that both a living entity and God Himself are under the control of Maya when they come into this material world. This may be true of the living entity, but it's not true of God. For in all instances, the material energy is working under His direction. Those who think the Supreme Lord is subject to material conditioning are called fools by Krishna Himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Avajananti mam mudha manusim tanamasrita param bhavam majananto mamabhuta maheshvaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should not be considered one of us. He is Krishna Himself, the Supreme Living Entity, and as such, He never comes under the cloud of Maya. Krishna, His expansions, and even His higher devotees never fall into the clutches of illusion. Lord Chaitanya came to earth simply to preach Krishna Bhakti, love of Krishna. In other words, He is Lord Krishna Himself, teaching the living entities the proper way to approach Krishna. He's like a teacher who, seeing a student doing poorly, takes up a pencil and writes, saying, "Do it like this, A, B, C." From this, one would not foolishly think that the teacher is learning his ABCs. Similarly, although Lord Chaitanya appears in the guise of a devotee, we should not foolishly think he is an ordinary human being. We should always remember that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, God himself, teaching us how to become Krishna conscious, and we must study him in that light. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna sets forth the highest religious principle in this way. Sarvadhaman parityajya mamekam saranam vraja aham tvam sarva pabhibhyo mokshayishyami ma sutra. Abandon all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. This may seem to be a simple instruction to follow, but invariably our reaction is, "Oh, surrender? Give it up? I have so many responsibilities." And Maya illusion says to us, "Don't do it, or you'll be out of my clutches. Just stay in my clutches and I'll kick you." It's a fact, we're constantly being kicked by Maya, just as the male ass is kicked in the face by the she-ass when he comes for sex. Similarly, cats and dogs are always fighting and whining when they have sex. These are the tricks of nature. Even an elephant in the jungle is caught by the use of a trained she-elephant who leads him into a pit. Maya has many activities, and in the material world her strongest shackle is the female. Of course, in actuality, we're neither male nor female, for these designations refer only to the outer dress, the body. We are actually Krishna's servants. In conditioned life, however, we're shackled by iron chains in the form of beautiful women. We are all, thus every male is bound by sex life, and therefore when one attempts to gain liberation from material clutches, one must first learn to control the sex urge. Unrestricted sex puts one fully in the clutches of illusion. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu officially renounced this illusion at the age of 24, although his wife was 16 and his mother 70, and he was the only male member of the family. Although he was a Brahmin and was not rich, he took sannyas, the renounced order of life, and thus extricated himself from family entanglement. If we wish to become fully Krishna conscious, we have to give up the shackles of Maya. Or, if we remain with Maya, we should live in such a way that we will not be subject to illusion. It's not necessary for a man to abandon his family, for there were many householders among Lord Chaitanya's closest devotees. What must be renounced is the propensity for material enjoyment. Although Lord Chaitanya approved of a householder having regulated sex in marriage, he was very strict with those in the renounced order, and he even banished Junior Haridas for glancing lustfully at a woman. The point is that one must take up a particular path and stick to it, obeying all the rules and regulations necessary for success in spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya's mission was to teach the path of Krishna consciousness to all men, and thereby enable them to partake of the immortality of spiritual life. From the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta we learn how Lord Chaitanya taught people to become immortal, and thus the title may be properly translated as the immortal character of the living force. The Supreme Living Force is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is also the Supreme Entity. There are innumerable living entities, and all of them are individuals. This is very easy to understand. We're all individual in thought and desires. The Supreme Lord is also an individual person. He's different, though, and he's the leader, the one whom no one can excel. Among the minute living entities, one being can excel another in one capacity or another. Like each of these living entities, the Lord is an individual, but he is different in that he is the supreme individual. God is also infallible. In Bhagavad Gita, he's addressed as Achyuta, which means he who never falls down. This name is indicated because in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna had fallen into delusion, but Krishna had not. We often hear it that God is infallible. The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna states, when a person properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature. Thus, we should not think that Krishna is overpowered by material potency when he's in the material world. Krishna and his incarnations are not under the control of material nature. They're totally free. Indeed, in Srimad Bhagavatam, one who has a godly nature is actually defined as one who is not affected by the modes of material nature, although in material nature. Even if a devotee can attain this freedom, then what to speak of the Supreme? The real question is, how can we remain unpolluted by material contamination while in the material world? It was Rupa Goswami who explained that we can remain uncontaminated while in the world if we simply make it our ambition to serve Krishna. One may then justifiably ask, how can I serve? Obviously, this is not simply a matter of meditation, which is just an activity of the mind, but of practical work. Love of Krishna's service can be attained only by working for Krishna. In such work, we should leave no resource unused. Whatever is there, whatever we have, should be used for Krishna. We can use everything: typewriters, automobiles, airplanes, missiles, anything. If we simply speak to people about Krishna consciousness, we are also rendering service. If our minds, senses, speech, money, and energies are all thus engaged in the service of Krishna, we cannot be considered to exist in the material nature. By virtue of spiritual consciousness, our Krishna consciousness, we transcend the platform of material nature. It's a fact that Krishna, his expansions, and his devotees, that is, those who work for him, are not in material nature, although people with a poor fund of knowledge think that they are. The Chaitanya-caritāmṛta teaches that the spirit soul is immortal, and that our activities in the spiritual world are also immortal. The Mayavadis, who hold to the view the Absolute is impersonal and formless, contend that a realized soul has no need to talk. However, the Vaishnavas, who are devotees of Krishna, contend that one reaches the stage of realization, he really begins to talk. Previously, we only talked of nonsense, the Vaishnavas say. Now let us begin our real talks of Krishna. The Mayavadis are also fond of using the example of the water pot, maintaining that when a pot is not filled with water, it makes no sound, but that when it is filled... Mayavadis are also fond of using the example of the water pot, maintaining when a pot is not filled with water, it makes a sound, but when it's filled with water, it makes no sound. But are we water pots? How can we be compared to them? A good analogy utilizes as many similarities between two objects as possible. A water pot is not an active living force, but we are. Ever-silent meditation may be adequate for a water pot, but not for us. Indeed, when a devotee realizes how much he has to say about Krishna, 24 hours in a day are not sufficient. It's the fool who is celebrated as long as he does not speak, for when he breaks his silence, his lack of knowledge is exposed. The Chaitanya-caritāmṛta shows that there are many wonderful things to discover by glorifying the Supreme. In the beginning of the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes, I offer my respects to my spiritual masters. He uses the plural here to indicate the disciplic succession. It is not that he offers obeisances to his spiritual master alone, but to the whole parampara, the chain of disciplic succession, beginning with Lord Krishna himself. Thus, the Guru is addressed in the plural to show the author's highest respect for all the Vaishnavas. After offering obeisances to the disciplic succession, the author pays obeisances to all the devotees, God brothers, expansions of Godhead, and the first manifestation of Krishna's energy. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sometimes called Krishna Chaitanya, is the embodiment of all of these. He is God, guru, devotee, and the expansion of God. As his associate Nityananda, he is the first manifestation of energy. As Advaita, he's an incarnation. As Gadadhar, he is the internal potency. And as Srivas, he's marginal living entity. Thus, Krishna should not be thought of as being alone, but should be considered as eternally existing with all his manifestations, as described by Ramanujacharya. In the Vishishtadvaita philosophy, God's energies, expansions, incarnations are considered to be oneness and diversity. In other words, God is not separate from all of these. Everything together is God. Actually, Chaitanya-caritāmṛta is not intended for the novice, for it is the postgraduate study of spiritual knowledge. Ideally, one begins with Bhagavad Gita, advances through Srimad Bhagavatam to the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta. Although all these great scriptures are on the same absolute level, for the sake of comparative study, the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta is considered to be on the highest platform. Every verse in it is perfectly composed. Indeed, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are compared to the sun and the moon, in that they dissipate the darkness of the material world. In this instance, both the sun and the moon have risen together. It is proper to offer obeisances directly to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. In the Western world, where the glories of Lord Chaitanya are relatively unknown, one may inquire, who is Krishna Chaitanya? The scriptural conclusion in answer to that question is, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, in the Upanishads, the Supreme Absolute Truth is described in an impersonal way, but the personal aspect of the Absolute Truth is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, where, after a description of the all-pervading, we find the following verse. Hiranmayena patrina satyastam pihitam mukam tattvam pushanapavanu satchadharmaya dristaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering, exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. The impersonalists do not have the power to go beyond the effulgence of God and arrive at the personality from whom this effulgence is emanating. At the end of the Ishopanishad, however, there's a hymn to the personality of Godhead. It's not that the impersonal Brahman is denied, it's also described, but that Brahman is considered to be the glaring effulgence of the body of Lord Chaitanya. In other words, Sri Krishna Chaitanya is the basis of the impersonal Brahman. It's also stated by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita that the impersonal Brahman rests on him. Brahmano hi pratistaham. The Paramatma, or the Supersoul, who is present within the heart of every living entity and within every atom of the universe, is but the partial representation of Lord Chaitanya. Sri Krishna Chaitanya is therefore the basis of Brahman and the Supreme Personality of Godhead as well. As the Supreme, he is full in 6 opulences: wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. In short, we should know that he is Krishna, God, and that nothing is equal to or greater than him. There is nothing superior to be conceived. He is the Supreme Person. It was Rupa Goswami, a confidential devotee, taught for more than 10 days continuously by Lord Chaitanya, who wrote, Namo Mahavadhanaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratuse Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is more magnanimous than any other avatar, even Krishna himself, because he's bestowing freely what no one else has ever given, pure love of Krishna. It's not that Lord Chaitanya teaches a long and elaborate path to God realization. He's completely spiritual, and he begins from the point of surrender to Krishna. He does not pursue the paths of karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, but begins at the end of material existence, at the point where one gives up all material attachment. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins his teachings by distinguishing the soul from matter. In the 18th chapter, he concludes at the point where the soul surrenders to him in devotion. The Mayavadis would have all talk cease there, but at that point the real discussion only begins. It is the Vedanta Sutra which begins, Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now let us begin to inquire about the Supreme Absolute Truth. Rupa Goswami thus praises Lord Chaitanya as the most munificent incarnation of all, for he gives the greatest gift by indicating the highest form of devotional service. In other words, he answers the most important inquiries that anyone can make. There are different stages of devotional service and God realization. Strictly speaking, anyone who accepts the existence of God is situated in devotional service. To acknowledge that God is great is something, but not much. Lord Chaitanya, preaching as an acharya, a great teacher, taught we can enter into a relationship with God and actually become God's friend. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna showed Arjuna his universal form because Arjuna was his very dear friend. Upon seeing Krishna as the Lord of the universes, however, Arjuna actually asked Krishna to forgive the familiarity of his friendship. Lord Chaitanya goes beyond this point. Through Lord Chaitanya we can become friends with Krishna, and there's no limit to this friendship. We become friends of Krishna not in awe or adoration, but in complete freedom. We can even relate to God as his Father. This is not only the philosophy of Chaitanya-caritāmṛta, but of Srimad Bhagavatam as well. There are no other scriptures in the world in which God is treated as the son of a devotee. Actually, God is seen as the Almighty Father who supplies the demands of his sons. The great devotees, however, sometimes treat God as their son in an execution of devotional service. The son demands, the father supplies, and in supplying Krishna, the devotee becomes like a father. Instead of taking from God, we give to God. It was in this relationship that Krishna's mother, Yasoda, told the Lord, "Here, eat this or you'll die. Eat nicely." In this way, Krishna, although the proprietor of everything, depends on the mercy of his devotee. This is a uniquely high level of friendship in which the devotee actually believes himself to be the father of Krishna. However, Lord Chaitanya's greatest gift was his teaching that Krishna can be actually treated as one's lover. In this relationship, the Lord is so much attached that he expresses his inability to reciprocate. Krishna was so obliged to the gopis, the cowherd girls of Vrindavan, that he felt unable to return their love. "I cannot repay your love," he told them. "I have no more assets to return." Thus, devotional service is performed on an excellent platform, and knowledge of the devotee's relationship to Krishna as lover and beloved was given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, Rupa Goswami wrote of Lord Chaitanya, "Devotional service is the relationship of lover and beloved, is the highest platform. The glorious platform of Lord Chaitanya has contributed, and it was never given by any previous incarnation or acharya. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in a yellow complexion, and he is Sachinandana, the son of Mother Sachi. May you always keep him in your hearts. It will be easy to understand Krishna through him." Thus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to deliver Krishna. His method of deliverance was not meditation, fruitive activities, or scriptural study, but love. We have often heard the phrase, love of Godhead. How far this love of Godhead can actually be developed can be learned from Vaishnava philosophy. Theoretical knowledge of love of God can be found in many places and in many scriptures, but what that love of Godhead actually is and how it is developed can be found in Vaishnava literature. It is the unique and highest development of love of God that is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even in this material world we can have a little sense of love. How is this possible? It is due to the love which is found in the Godhead. Whatever we find within our experience, within this conditioned life, is situated in the Supreme Lord, who is the ultimate source of everything. In our original relationship with the Supreme Lord, there is real love, and that love is reflected pervertedly through material conditions. Our real love is continuous and unending, but because that love is reflected pervertedly in the material world, it lacks continuity, and it is inebriating. If we want real, transcendental love, we have to transfer our love to the supreme lovable object, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. In material consciousness, we're trying to love that which is not at all lovable. We give our love to dogs and cats, running the risk that at the time of death we may think of them and consequently take birth in a family of cats or dogs. Thus, love that does not have Krishna as its object leads downward. It is not that Krishna or God is something obscure or something that only a few chosen people can attain. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu informs us that in every country and in every scripture there's some hint of love of Godhead. Unfortunately, no one knows what love of Godhead actually is. The Vedic scriptures, however, are different in that they can direct the individual in the proper way to love God. Other scriptures do not give information on how one can love God, nor do they actually define or describe what or who the Godhead actually is. Although they officially promote love of Godhead, they have no idea how to execute it. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives a practical demonstration of how to love God in a conjugal relationship. Taking the part of Srimati Radharani, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tried to love Krishna as Radharani loved him. Krishna was always amazed by Radharani's love. "How does Radharani give me such pleasure?" he would ask. In order to study Radharani, Krishna lived in her role and tried to understand himself. This is the secret of Lord Chaitanya's incarnation. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, but he's taken the mood and role of Radharani to show us how to love Krishna. Thus he is addressed, "I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, who is absorbed in Radharani's thoughts." This brings up the question of who Srimati Radharani is and what Radha Krishna is. Actually, Radha Krishna is the exchange of love. This is not ordinary love. Krishna has immense potencies, of which three are principal: internal, external, and marginal potencies. The internal potency, there are three divisions: Samvit, Ladini, and Sandini. Ladini potency is the pleasure potency. All living entities have this pleasure-seeking potency, for all beings are trying to have pleasure. This is the very nature of the living entity. At present, we're trying to enjoy our pleasure potency by means of the body in this material condition. By bodily contact, we're attempting to derive pleasure from material sense objects. We should not think, however, that Krishna, who is always spiritual, tries to seek pleasure on the material plane like us. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes the material universe as a non-permanent place full of miseries. Why then would he seek pleasure in the material form? He's the Supersoul, the Supreme Spirit, and his pleasure is beyond the material conception. In order to learn how Krishna's pleasure can be obtained, we must read the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Krishna's pleasure potency is displayed in his pastimes with Radharani and the damsels of Vraj. Unfortunately, unintelligent people turn at once to the sports of Krishna in the Dasamaskanda, the 10th canto. Krishna is embracing Radharani or is dancing with the cowherd girls in rasa dance are generally not understood by ordinary men because they consider these pastimes in the light of mundane lust. They incorrectly think that Krishna is like themselves and he embraces the gopis like an ordinary man embraces a young girl. Some people thus become interested in Krishna because they think his religion allows indulgence in sex. This is not Krishna Bhakti, love of Krishna, but is prakrita sahajiya, materialistic lust. In order to avoid such errors, we should understand what Radha and Krishna actually is. Radha and Krishna display their pastimes through Krishna's internal energy. The pleasure potency of Krishna's internal energy is a most difficult subject matter, and unless one understands what Krishna is, one cannot understand it. Krishna does not take any pleasure in this material world, but he has a pleasure potency. Because we are part and parcel of Krishna, pleasure potency is within us also, but we're trying to exhibit that pleasure potency in matter. Krishna, however, does not make such a vain attempt. The object of Krishna's pleasure potency is Radharani. Krishna exhibits his potency, or energy, as Radharani, and then engages in loving affairs with her. In other words, Krishna does not take pleasure in the external energy, but exhibits his internal energy, his pleasure potency, as Radharani. Thus Krishna manifests himself as Radharani in order to exhibit his internal pleasure potency. Of the many extensions, expansions, and incarnations of the Lord, this pleasure potency is the foremost and chief. It's not that Radharani is separate from Krishna. Radharani is also Krishna, for there's no difference between the energy and the energetic. Without energy, there's no meaning to the energetic. Without energetic, there's no energy. Similarly, without Radha, there's no meaning to Krishna. Without Krishna, there's no meaning to Radha. Because of this, the Vaishnava philosophy first of all pays obeisances to and worships the internal pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Thus the Lord and his potency are always referred to as Radha Krishna. Similarly, those who worship the name of Narayan first of all utter the name of Lakshmi, Lakshmi Narayan. Similarly, those who worship Ram first of all utter the name Sita. In any case, Sita Ram, Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, the potencies always come first. Radha and Krishna are one, and when Krishna desires to enjoy pleasure, he manifests himself as Radharani. The spiritual exchange of love between Radha and Krishna is the actual display of the internal pleasure potency of Krishna. Although we speak of when Krishna desires, just when he did desire we cannot say. We only speak in this way because in conditioned life we take it that everything has a beginning. However, in the absolute or spiritual world, life there is neither beginning nor end. Yet, in order to understand that Krishna and Radha are one, and that they also become divided, the question when automatically comes to mind. When Krishna desired to enjoy his pleasure potency, he manifested himself in the separate form of Radharani. And when he wanted to understand himself through the agency of Radharani, he united with Radharani, and that unification is called Lord Chaitanya. Why did Krishna assume the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? It is explained that Krishna desired to know the glory of Radha's love. Why is she so much in love with me? Krishna asked. What is my special qualification that attracts her so? What is the actual way in which she loves me? It seems strange that Krishna, as the Supreme, should be attracted by anyone's love. We search after the love of a woman or a man because we're imperfect and lack something. The love of a woman, that potency and pleasure, is absent in man, and therefore a man wants a woman. But this is not the case with Krishna, who's full in himself. Thus Krishna expressed surprise. Why am I attracted by Radharani? And when Radharani feels my love, what is she actually feeling? In order to taste the essence of that loving affair, Krishna appeared just as the moon appears on the horizon of the sea. Just as the moon was produced by the churning of the sea, the churning of spiritual love affairs, the moon of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Indeed, Lord Chaitanya's complexion was golden, just like the moon. Although this is figurative language, it conveys the meaning behind the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The full significance of his appearance will be explained in later chapters. The manifestations of the Supreme are also explained in Chaitanya-caritāmṛta. After offering respects to Lord Chaitanya, Krishnadas Kaviraj next offers them to Lord Nityananda. He explains that Lord Nityananda is a manifestation of Sankarshan, who is the origin of Mahavishnu. Krishna's first manifestation is as Balaram. Then he is manifest as Shankarshan, and after Shankarshan he manifests as Pradyumna. In this way, so many expansions take place. Although there are many expansions, Lord Krishna is the origin, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita. He's like the original candle from which many thousands and millions of candles are lit. Although any number of candles can be lighted, the original candle still retains its identity as the original. In this way, Krishna expands himself into so many lights, and all these expansions are called Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu is a large light, we're all small lights, but all are expansions of Krishna. When it is necessary to create the material universes, Vishnu expands himself as Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu lies down in the causal ocean and breathes all the universes from his nostrils. Thus, from Mahavishnu in the causal ocean, all the universes spring, and all these universes float in the causal ocean. In this way, there is the story of Vamana, who, when he took 3 steps, stuck his foot through the covering of the universe. Water from the causal ocean flowed through the hole that his foot made, and it's said that that flow of water became the river Ganges. Therefore, the Ganges is accepted as the most sacred water of Vishnu and is worshipped by all Hindus from the Himalayas down to the Bay of Bengal. Mahavishnu is actually an expansion of Balaram, who was Krishna's first expansion, and, in the Vrindavan pastimes, his brother. In the Mahamantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, the word Rama refers to Balaram. Since Lord Nityananda is an expansion of Balaram, Rama also refers to Lord Nityananda. Thus, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama addresses not only Krishna and Balaram, but Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda as well. The subject matter of the Caitanya-caritāmṛta primarily deals with what is beyond this material creation. The cosmic material expansion is called Maya, or illusion, because it has no eternal existence. Because it is sometimes manifested and sometimes not manifested, it's regarded as illusory. But beyond the temporary manifestation is a higher nature, as indicated in Bhagavad Gita. Parastasmat tu bhavonyo yakto vyaktat sanatana ya sarveshu bhuteshu nasyatshu na vinashyati. Yet there is another unmanifested nature, which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It's supreme, it's never annihilated. When all this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. That supreme nature is beyond the manifested, vyakta, and unmanifested, avyakta. The superior nature beyond both creation and annihilation is the living force, which is manifest in the bodies of all living entities. The body itself is composed of inferior nature, or matter, but it is the superior nature that is moving the body. The symptom of that superior nature is consciousness. Thus, in the spiritual world, where everything is composed of the superior nature, everything is conscious. In the material world, inanimate objects are not conscious, but in the spiritual world, this is not so. There, a table is conscious. The land is conscious. The trees are conscious. Everything is conscious. It's not possible to imagine how far this material manifestation extends. In the material world, everything is calculated by imagination or by some imperfect method. But the Vedic literature gives information of what lies beyond the material universe. Those who believe in experimental knowledge may doubt the Vedic conclusions, for they cannot even calculate how far this universe extends, nor can they reach far into the universe itself. It's not possible to obtain information of anything beyond this material nature by experimental means. That which is beyond our power of conception is called achintya, inconceivable. It's useless to argue or speculate about what is inconceivable. If it is truly inconceivable, It is not subject to speculation or experimentation. Our energy is limited. Our sense perception is limited. Therefore, we must rely on the Vedic conclusions regarding that subject matter which is inconceivable. Knowledge of the superior nature must simply be accepted without argument. How is it possible to argue about something to which we have no access? The method for understanding transcendental subject matter is given by Lord Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna tells Arjuna at the beginning of the 4th chapter. Imam vivaspate yogam proktavana hamavyayan vivasvan manave praha manur ikshvakabe pravid. I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. This is the method of parampara, or disciplic succession. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam explains that Krishna imparted knowledge into the heart of Brahma, the first living creature within the universe. Brahma imparted those lessons to his disciple Narada, and Narada imparted that knowledge to his disciple Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva imparted it to Madhvacharya, and from Madhvacharya the knowledge has come down to Madhavendra Puri, Ishwara Puri, and from him to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One may ask that if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, why did he need a spiritual master? Of course he did not need a spiritual master, but because he was playing the role of an acharya, one who teaches by example, he accepted a spiritual master. Even Krishna himself accepted a spiritual master, for that is the system. In this way the Lord sets the example for men. We should not think, however, that the Lord takes a spiritual master because he is in want of knowledge. He's simply stressing the importance of accepting the disciplic succession. The knowledge of that disciplic succession actually comes from the Lord himself, and if the knowledge descends unbroken, it's perfect. Although we may not be in touch with the original personality who first imparted the knowledge, we may receive the same knowledge through this process of transmission. In Srimad Bhagavatam it's stated that Krishna, the Absolute Truth, personality of Godhead, transmitted transcendental knowledge into the heart of Brahma. This, then, is one way knowledge is received through the heart. Thus, there are two processes by which one may receive knowledge. One depends upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated as the Supersoul within the heart of all living entities, and the other depends upon the Guru, or the spiritual master, who is an expansion of Krishna. Thus, Krishna transmits information both from within and from without. We simply have to receive it. If knowledge is received in this way, it doesn't matter whether it is inconceivable or not. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a great deal of information given about the Vaikuntha planetary systems, which are beyond the material universe. Similarly, a great deal of inconceivable information is given in Chaitanya-caritāmṛta. Any attempt to arrive at this information through experimental knowledge will fail. The knowledge simply has to be accepted. According to the Vedic method, Shabda, or transcendental sound, is regarded as evidence. Sound is very important in Vedic understanding, for if it is pure, it is accepted as authoritative. Even in the material world, we accept a great deal of information which is sent thousands of miles by telephone or radio. In this way, we also accept sound as evidence in our daily lives. Although we cannot see the informant, we accept his information as valid on the basis of sound. Sound vibration, then, is very important in the transmission of Vedic knowledge. The Vedas inform us that beyond this cosmic manifestation, there are extensive planets and the spiritual sky. This material manifestation is regarded as only a small portion of the total creation. The material manifestation includes not only this universe, but innumerable others as well. But all the material universes combined comprise only one fraction of the total creation. The majority of the creation is situated in the spiritual sky. In that sky, innumerable planets float, and these are called Vaikuntha Lokas. In every Vaikuntha Loka, Narayan presides in the form of his four-armed expansions, Shankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. As stated before, the material universes are manifested by the Lord in the form of Mahavishnu. Just as a husband and wife combine to beget offspring, Mahavishnu combines with his wife Maya, or material nature. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna states, Sarvayonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasham brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I'm a seed-giving father. Vishnu impregnated Maya, the material nature, simply by glancing at her. This is the spiritual method. Materially, we are limited to impregnating by only one particular part of our body, but the Supreme Lord, Krishna, or Mahavishnu, can impregnate any part by any part. Simply by glancing, the Lord can conceive countless living entities in the womb of material nature. The Brahma Samhita confirms that the spiritual body of the Supreme Lord is so powerful that any part of his body can perform the functions of any other part. We can touch only with our hands or skin, but Krishna can touch just by glancing. We can only see with our eyes. We cannot touch or smell with them. Krishna, however, can smell and also eat with his eyes. When foods are offered to Krishna, we don't see him eating, but he eats simply by glancing at the food. We cannot imagine how things work in the spiritual world, where everything is spiritual. It is not that Krishna does not eat, or that we imagine that he eats. He actually eats, but his eating is different from ours. Our eating process will be similar to his when we're completely on the spiritual platform. On that platform, every part of the body can act on behalf of any other part. Vishnu does not require anything in order to create. He does not require the goddess Lakshmi in order to give birth to Brahma, for Brahma is born from a lotus flower that grows from the navel of Vishnu. The goddess Lakshmi sits at the feet of Vishnu and serves him. In this material world, sex is required to produce children. But in the spiritual world, a man can produce as many children as he likes, without having to take the help from his wife. Because we have no experience with spiritual energy, we think that Brahma's birth from the navel of Vishnu is simply a fictional story. We're not aware that spiritual energy is so powerful, it can do anything and everything. Material energy is dependent on certain laws, but spiritual energy is fully independent. Brahma is born from the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who is but a partial manifestation of Mahavishnu. Countless universes reside like seeds within the skin pores of Mahavishnu, and when he inhales, they are all manifest. In the material world, we have no experience of such a thing, but we do experience a perverted reflection in the phenomena of perspiration. We cannot imagine, however, the duration of one breath of Mahavishnu. For within one breath, all the universes are created and annihilated. Lord Brahma lives only for the duration of one breath. According to our time scale, 4,320,000,000 years constitute only 12 hours of Brahma, and Brahma lives 100 of his years. Yet, the whole life of Brahma is contained within one breath of Mahavishnu. Thus, it's not possible for us to imagine the breathing power of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, of whom Mahavishnu is but a partial manifestation. Thus, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami discusses Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Sri Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Lord Nityananda as Balaram, the first expansion of Krishna. Advaitacharya, another principal disciple of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, is accepted as an expansion of Mahavishnu. Thus, Advaitacharya is also the Lord, or more precisely, an expansion of the Lord. The word Advaita means non-dual, and his name is such because he's non-different from the Supreme Lord. He's also called Acharya, or teacher, because he disseminated Krishna consciousness. In this way, he is just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although Lord Chaitanya is Sri Krishna himself, he appeared as a devotee to teach people in general how to love Krishna. Similarly, Advaitacharya appeared just to distribute the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Thus, he is also the Lord incarnated as a devotee. In the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, Krishna is manifested in 5 different features, and he and his associates appear as devotees of the Supreme Lord in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, Advaitacharya, Sri Gadadhar, and Srivas. In all cases, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the source of energy for all his devotees. Since this is the case, if we take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the successful execution of Krishna consciousness, we're sure to make progress. One devotional song sung by Narottam Das Thakur states, "My dear Lord Chaitanya, please have mercy upon me. There is no one who is as merciful as you. My plea is most urgent, because your mission is to deliver fallen souls. No one is more fallen than I. I beg priority." The author of Chaitanya-caritāmṛta, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, was an inhabitant of Vrindavan and a great devotee. He had been living with his family in Katwa, a small town in the district of Burdwan in Bengal. His family also worshipped Radha Krishna, and once, when there was some misunderstanding among his family about devotional service, Krishna Das Kaviraj was advised by Nityananda Prabhu in a dream to leave home and go to Vrindavan. Although he was very old, he started out that very night and went to live in Vrindavan. While he was there, he met some of the Goswamis, principal disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was requested to write Chaitanya-caritāmṛta by the devotees of Vrindavan. Although he began this work at a very old age, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya he finished it. Today, it remains the most authoritative book on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy and life. When Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was living in Vrindavan, there were not very many temples. At that time, Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Gopinath were the 3 principal temples. As a resident of Vrindavan, he offered his respects to the deities in these temples and requested God's favor. "My progress in spiritual life is very slow, so I'm asking your help." In the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta, Krishnadas first offers his obeisances to Madan Mohan Vigraha, the deity who can help us progress in Krishna consciousness. In the execution of Krishna consciousness, our first business is to know Krishna and our relationship with him. To know Krishna is to know oneself. To know oneself is to know one's relationship with Krishna. Since this relationship can be learned by worshipping Madan Mohan Vigraha, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami first establishes his relationship with him. When this is established, Krishnadas begins to worship the functional deity Govinda. Govinda resides eternally in Vrindavan. In the spiritual world of Vrindavan, the buildings are made of touchstone. The cows are known as Sarabi cows, givers of abundant milk, and the trees are known as wish-fulfilling trees, for they yield whatever one desires. In Vrindavan, Krishna herds the Sarabi cows, and he's worshipped by hundreds and thousands of gopis, cowherd girls, who are all goddesses of fortune. When Krishna descends to the material world, the same Vrindavan descends, just as an entourage accompanies an important personage. Because when Krishna comes, his land also comes, Vrindavan is not considered to exist in the material world. Therefore, devotees take shelter of the Vrindavan in India, for it's considered to be a replica of the original Vrindavan. Although one may complain that no kalpavriksha wish-fulfilling trees exist there, when the gopis were there, kalpavriksha were present. It is not that one can simply go to such a tree and make demands. One must first become a devotee. The Goswamis would live under a tree for one night only, and the tree would satisfy all their desires. For the common man, this may seem all very wonderful, but as one makes progress in devotional service, all this can be realized. Vrindavan is actually experienced as it is by persons who have stopped trying to derive pleasure from material enjoyment. When will my mind become cleansed of all hankering for material enjoyment, so I'll be able to see Vrindavan? One great devotee asked. The more Krishna conscious we become, the more we advance, the more everything is revealed as spiritual. Thus, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami considered Vrindavan in India to be as good as the Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. And in the Chaitanya-caritāmṛta he describes Radharani and Krishna as seated beneath a wish-fulfilling tree in Vrindavan, on a throne decorated with valuable jewels. There, Krishna's dear friends, the cowherd boys and the gopis, serve Radha and Krishna by singing, dancing, offering betel nuts and refreshments, and decorating their lordships with flowers. Even today in India, people decorate thrones and recreate this scene during the month of July. Generally, at that time, people go to Vrindavan to offer their respects to the deities there. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami maintains that the Govinda deity shows us how to serve Radha and Krishna. The Madan Mohan deity simply establishes that I am your eternal servant. With Govinda, however, there is actual acceptance of service, and therefore he's called the functional deity. The Gopinath deity is Krishna as master and proprietor of the gopis. He attracted all the gopis or cowherd girls by the sound of his flute, and when they came, he danced with them. These activities are all described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These gopis were childhood friends of Krishna, and they were all married, for in India the girls are married at the age of 12. The boys, however, are not married before 18. So Krishna, who was 15 or 16 at the time, was not married. Nevertheless, he called these girls from their homes and invited them to dance with him. That dance is called the Rasa Lila dance, and it is the most elevated of all the Vrindavan pastimes. Krishna is therefore called Gopinath, because he's the beloved master of the gopis. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami petitions the blessings of Lord Gopinath. May that Gopinath, the master of the gopis, Krishna, bless you. May you become blessed by Gopinath. The author of Chaitanya-caritāmṛta prays that just as Krishna attracted the gopis by the sweet sound of his flute, he will also attract the reader's mind by his transcendental vibration.